Hi, folks. Thanks so much for stopping in for this next episode of Creative Psychology with Dr. Doug. I am Dr. Doug, and today we're going to be talking about a topic that many people have been asking me about. How the heck, maybe they don't use the word heck, how the heck do I find a therapist? Before we get into that, if you could, down below in the comment section, just say a few words about why you stopped. What is it about this topic that interested you, as well as any other topics that you might be interested in hearing more about. So for now, let's get into how to find a therapist. Prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, it was already kind of difficult to find a mental health clinician. Obviously, some cities and some states, it was a little bit more challenging than certain other areas. But in general, it was already a little bit difficult. And then during the last few years, during the pandemic, it became really hard for a lot of people to find a new clinician if they didn't already have one. And, the stories I hear are nobody's responding to my phone calls, nobody's returning my emails. I've reached out to like dozens of therapists over the last several months, and I haven't heard back from anybody. Or the people that I do hear back from, they have no openings and they're waitlisting maybe several months out or maybe no waitlist at all. And so then the question is, where do I find a therapist? What am I doing wrong? Am I doing something wrong? Is there something that I could be doing better? So today, I actually am going to give you some pretty solid suggestions for how to make your search more effective. And here they are. Hopefully that worked. For my regular viewers, you'll be very proud to see that there are more than 3, although within this list of 8, there might be some subsets of 3 because I don't seem to be able to avoid it. But for right now, there are 8 main suggestions that I'm going to be touching on in this video. The first of these, tailor your message. This is probably the most important, if not the most effective way that you can sort of improve your possibility that a therapist or a clinician will respond to your inquiry. So what does that mean? It means that your message, whether it's a voicemail or email or message through a website, that your message is tailored to that provider. And your message makes it clear that I have read your profile or that I've looked at your website, and looking at the website is even better because it's sort of showing the clinician that you are serious and that you are willing to put in some extra effort in order to figure out whether this person was a good fit for you. And in your message, you want to indicate what is it about their profile or their website that drew you in, what appealed to you, how does it apply to you and your specific situation. So these clinicians sort of want to know that you have done an initial screening sort of them. And this is what else I've seen on your website. Your tone is really funny and I like your lighthearted nature. That's sort of the way that I prefer to operate. So sort of like that, right? Like you're naming specifics about that clinician and naming specifics about yourself and addressing how those two things are complementary with each other. So this does not need to be like a book or paragraphs. And actually, I'll sort of say a little bit later on about don't do a big paragraph. So you want to be succinct and just dedicating, 2 or 3 sentences to what is it about them, what is it about you, and how do those things complement each other. So that's one, tailoring your message. One more thing about tailoring your message before we move on. How do I say this? Sort of like, you know how there are, maybe people that are claiming to be psychics who are not really psychic, and you hear the things that they say, and you just sort of think like, oh, that's so general. Of course, that applies to every single human being in the world. So you want to make sure that you avoid making comments like that to the clinician. You're trying to make sure that the clinician understands that you have not done mass messaging, sent the same message to a bunch of clinicians. That will be a big, big turnoff and will greatly decrease the chances that you'll get a response. So avoid fakey, generalizing type of comments. Number 2, why are you seeking therapy? Seems like common sense that you would mention that, but not everybody does. So again, brevity is the key. So don't say a ton of stuff about this. Honestly, one sentence. And I want to come in because I am experiencing depression. I've been worrying a lot. I have anxiety, whatever it might be. Just sort of straight up name whatever it is that's going on for you that is sort of causing you to want to come in for services. Number 3, format of therapy. What is the format that you're looking for? Is it individual, couple, family, group, none of the above, all of the above, whatever it might be? Just very specifically naming that I want this type of therapy. Boom. Number 4, say something about money. I guess saying something is way too abstract. Don't just say anything about money. That's not going to work. So say something about how you're going to pay. And the reason why I say this, it's not because clinicians are money hungry or that they're chasing money or that that's a motivator for them. Like, I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is that for you to give some details about how you're going to pay so that the clinician knows whether that actually lines up with the way that they operate. So it could be that you want to use a certain health insurance. And so let them know the name of that health insurance so that they know whether they are contracted with that company or not. Again, you don't need to go into big detail. Just name it so that the clinician knows whether that will work or not. Number 5 is another logistical topic of talking about your schedule or your availability. It might be that the clinician on their website or on their ad or whatever it is that you saw, maybe they've posted their office hours. And if so, you can, again, going back to number 1 of tailoring your message, so sort of mentioning, I saw on your website, these are your office hours. That's great because it lines up with my availability. Specifically, so whatever the details are of your availability, just sort of spell that out very concretely. Number 6, I think number 6 is right. Can you wait? So some clinicians are keeping wait lists. Some are not, and you only know by contacting them or maybe on their website they've said something. So if a clinician is full and you mention in your message that I can wait because I want to work with you specifically because of all those reasons I listed in number 1 of tailoring my message, or if you can't wait, to say, like, this is very urgent, and if I can't get in to see you now, then this might not be a good fit, something like that. Number 7, oops, there it is. Number 7 is a little bit different because typically I don't suggestions. However, in this case, I have given you 7 do's and 1 don't. So this don't is don't attempt to pull on the heartstrings of the mental health clinician that you're reaching out to. So I can totally understand the reasoning behind why you would give the details of how bad things are. You know, that on the one hand, I want this clinician to know what's going on with me so that they can decide whether this is a good fit, this is something that they work with. Secondly, I could also see the reasoning of, maybe if I tell this clinician how bad things are, how bad off I am, how distressed I am, sort of all of these crappy things that have been happening, that maybe they will feel more compassion for me, and that will encourage them to respond or to make room in their schedule, even if they don't have room in their schedule, whatever that might be. So I understand the reasoning, totally makes sense. And unfortunately, that kind of strategy usually backfires. And there's probably a whole complex multitude of reasons why it backfires. So your better bet is to sort of follow the other 7 things that I'm talking about here in this video, and to avoid any kind of sort of pulling on heartstrings type of strategy, right? So instead, just this is what's going on for me, this is what I want, and you can sort of say all that, and it will still relay the importance. I mean, they know that it's important, or else you wouldn't be reaching out for services. So you can sort of relay the importance. And the other things that I'm talking about today are actually much more powerful than pulling on heartstrings when it comes to sort of getting a response from a clinician nowadays, at least. So I hope that makes sense. And I'm really hoping it didn't come across as too like cold-hearted, or I thought that it was really important for everybody to know that, because I don't want you to continue to use a strategy that doesn't work. And not only that doesn't work, but that actually backfires on you. Finally, number 8 is to mention something about previous experiences with therapy, if you have had previous experiences. So if you've had a previous experience with a therapist, then maybe just like 1 sentence, what it was about that therapy, maybe if there was any kind of specifics that you think you should mention, or sort of, I've never been in therapy before, and I've been trying to figure this stuff out on my own, and now I'm realizing that I really need help. And that's fine too. So just letting the therapist know straight up what those experiences are. And again, being as brief as you possibly can. So those are your 8 suggestions in your search for a mental health clinician. And these 8 really apply to any type of clinician that you might be looking for, any type of mental health clinician. I'm all for working smarter rather than harder. And, if you think about, some of you might be listening to this list of 8 and thinking, oh my gosh, this is just way too much work. It's going to take way too much effort. Compare that to using a mass, like 1 email that you're using for a bunch of people, and doing that every single day to like a dozen providers every day for months on end, and not getting responses or getting negative responses. Like that, not only the physical effort of doing that, but the emotional and mental effort of continuing to try to get responses, try to get services, and constantly getting either no response or negative responses from these clinicians. That to me seems so much more exhausting than actually sort of being very specific in each message that you put out so that you increase the possibility of success with every single message that you send out. So really, this is a targeted strategy rather than doing this widespread, because it's become very clear over the last few years that that widespread type of strategy is just not effective, at least not anymore. Maybe it used to be, but nowadays it's really not. And if you do this sort of wide strategy and do happen to get a provider that responds, there's a very good chance that that will end up not being a good fit, whether it is that they don't work on the types of difficulties that you're having, or maybe it's just a poor personality fit, whatever it might be. So it is extremely helpful for you to do that initial screening and making sure that what I'm looking for seems to be sort of corresponding to what this clinician does. I like their voice, how they're sort of presenting themselves, and I think that we would be able to communicate really well. So you've done an initial screening, and then you're letting that clinician know you've done that initial screening and that you're providing all of these details so that the clinician doesn't have to go back and forth with you, right? Where they send you a message, oh, what kind of health insurance do you have? And then a couple of days later, you respond back with that. And then they respond back with, oh, I'm not actually paneled with that insurance company. So now you've lost an entire week, right? Just because of this back and forth. But if you could give this information sort of straight up in the very first interaction or message to them, now you've saved a bunch of time, a bunch of effort, bunch of energy for both you and the clinician, and greatly increase the possibility that not only will you get a positive response, but that you'll get a response, and that if this person can see you, you've greatly increased the possibility that it will actually be a good fit. And you won't have to be searching for another clinician, in a few months. So hopefully this is helpful, and hopefully I'm telling you maybe a couple of things that you didn't know. I feel like these are maybe like insider secrets within the therapy field. Down below in the video description, I've listed out some specific directories where you may be able to find a mental health clinician. And of course, there are a bazillion directories right now. And the ones that I pulled out to specifically list below, it's not that I'm specifically recommending these services, but they're sort of unique or certain types of characteristics of some of these directories that caught my eye, such as some directories will let you filter for therapist ethnicity or therapist race or sexual orientation or gender. And I like that you can actually filter for those in the type of clinician that you're looking for. So check that out down in the video description below. So that's it for how to find a therapist. And thank you so much for watching this video. Please comment down below what you think of this video, any other topics that you might be interested in hearing more about. And please like and subscribe so that you get word of additional videos that I'm putting out. And as usual, whether we are interacting here in YouTube land, in Instagram, wherever that might be, or, for some of you right here in my office, I'm just really excited and looking forward to creating something with you that brings clarity, connection, and hope. Until next time.